Hi, my name's Ray Poynter, and I want to talk to you about brand price trade-off, or rather, I want to talk to you about how you can improve brand price trade-off. So originally, brand price trade-off was developed in the 1970s, and my big warning for you, if you remember nothing else from today, is the original version, the one that used to be quite common, does not work, and I'm going to explain why it doesn't work. And I'm also going to suggest to you how it can be modified to make something that is actually much more useful and much more practical. So here's an example from some disguised data. It was actually tea, not coffee, so that's how strong the disguise was, talking about brand price trade-off and how it works. So imagine that we're looking at a set of coffees. Every one of those coffees has a price where it was on sale. So the Dow Egberts was on sale for $5.29. And what we would do in a traditional brand price trade-off is we would say something like, well, we want to test it for a minus 40% to plus 40%. So in this case, that'd be from £3.17 through to £7.41. And one of the things we know about market research is we want to try to make the data collection as realistic as possible. And what happens with the traditional brand price trade-off is the first thing we do is we show everything at minus 40% from its normal price. So this Dow Egberts, which should be £5 something, is suddenly being displayed at $3.17. So we start off by messing with the respondents' brains, and they're suddenly shown a market where they've gone in there and everything is fantastically cheap. And we say, right, try to be as realistic as possible. And it feels very strange to them. So anyway, perhaps they make a choice and they'll pick the Dow Egberts at $3.17. What happens is it crosses out that price and it puts up a new price, $3.70, and says, okay, which would you choose now? And they might say, well, I'd still have the Dow Egberts at $3.70. It's a pretty good price. And the price goes up again. At this point, the respondent begins to see what's happening. Oh, I see. Every time I pick one, the price goes up. And of course, respondents try to help us. So some respondents will take it into their mind, I should probably keep sticking with the same one to show that I like it. Other respondents will say, I wonder if I'm supposed to keep picking the cheapest one. And they will start trying to help us, which means they sort of destroy the rationality of that data by going around picking patterns. And I've seen people insist that they would buy a candy bar at about £10 because they've simply stuck with something thinking that was the purpose of the test. And we really don't want them thinking what the purpose of the test is. We want them reacting as quickly and as cleanly as we can. So in this particular example, they might have gone on to the Nescafe Ultra Reconnect, and the price of that one goes up. And it's an incredibly obvious task to them. So what were the limitations of that traditional brand price trade-off? You can only have a limited number of concepts. There's only so many can fit on the screen. They start the prices well below the market prices, and that sort of destroys the frame of reference. Lots and lots of steps. In order to get that simple matrix I showed you a moment ago all the way to the top, every one of the products has to go from the bottom along the way up its set of prices. Many respondents simply can't do this task. Get some really weird numbers back. The task is incredibly repetitive. You pick one and it goes up. You pick one and it goes up. It's too obvious and it's too annoying. So, strong recommendation, don't use the traditional brand price trade-off. So, we can modify that. How about we start on real prices? How about we use an evoked set from the respondent? So we show them all the products that are on the marketplace and we find the 8 or the 10 or the 12 that they are realistically going to consider, because price changes in the real marketplace probably aren't going to happen outside of their consideration set. So the consideration set or the evoked list is the way to go. We can reduce the number of tasks from the 40 or 50 from the traditional brand price trade-off to 10, 11 or 12. We can make the tasks more engaging for the respondent. And this is now quite an established technique. It was first published back in 1997 at the Sawtooth Conference. It's been used now for several years by some organisations, particularly in the UK. Virtual surveys, now known as Join the Dots, have been using it. So if we take the modified brand price trade-off, we start off, here's the evoked set that we've collected for this respondent, and we show them at current prices. And these prices can even be regionally dependent, or they can be focused upon the prices that relate to their supermarket, or whether they buy online versus offline. All of that can be factored in to get the sensible, correct starting prices. And so somebody says, okay, yeah, I'm going to buy the Dow Egberts. That's my favorite brand. Those are all the normal prices. So yeah, that actually gives us a check. We should find that they pick their regular brand in this first screen, because we know that we're showing it to them at their regular prices, and we know what their regular brand is. So we've got a bit of an inconsistency check to start with. They pick this one, and a little bit like the brand price trade-off, the price of it goes up. But the price of the Café Direct goes down. The price of the Carte Noire goes down. We wouldn't show the old prices. They're up here for your benefit watching this presentation. So the price of everything else goes down in the market. So we've actually done something quite shocking to the respondent. We've put the price of their brand up and everything else down. So all of a sudden, there's a big tension created. Where would you go next? Maybe this person would go and say, okay, I'd buy the Nescafé Alta Rica. So what's going to happen next? At £5.95, this person rejected Alta Rica. At £5.71, they bought Alta Rica. So the software is going to guess for this person it's worth about £5.83. For Dow Egberts, they bought it at £5.29. They rejected it at £5.82. So we're going to guess that for this person it's worth about £5.70. So the software has now started guessing better estimates for what this product is worth for these two products. For everything else, it's not been bought yet. It wasn't, the Café Direct wasn't bought at $5.34. It wasn't bought at $5.13. So it's going to be offered at $4.92. And similarly, the other products keep moving down. And we can move along in 10 or 12 choices and get a really good fix on at what price would people start to buy that product, or would they not start to buy it at any sensible price that we are testing. What do we collect through that process? Well, for each respondent, we collect the price value for each product. All of the products that didn't make the evoke set, we say, are not going to be purchased at sensible prices. For those that did make it into the test, we have the value that the respondent puts to it, which means if we put prices by those, we can work out which they would choose, the one which has the biggest difference between the value they ascribe to it and the price it's on offer. For each product, we know what value the respondent has for it. We know the number of people who value it most. We know the number of people who say they would never buy it within a realistic marketing situation. We can then move to what-if modeling. And here's a very simple example. You're going to see some really nice examples in some of the other presentations during the day. But here's a very simple example. We can take the Dow Egberts and we can say, what would happen if we increased it by, as we say in the UK, 60 pence, 60 cents, I guess, for other currencies. The base share would go down. We can see how much of a change that is. We can look and see where that share would come from. By modeling lots of different prices for the same brand, we get the demand curve. And fundamentally, we want to look at the demand curve. We want to look at the cross elasticities. We want to look at the what-if scenarios. But we always want to look and say, how responsive is this brand to price changes? Where might the optimal price be in terms of revenue maximization and in terms of profit maximization? Constraints and limitations. It is a better brand price trade-off, but we still need to be aware that it's based on 100% awareness and distribution. If you watch people shop, you will notice they often do not look at the price. In this study, they're looking at the price. So what will typically happen in the real market is that price changes happen much more slowly than they do in a test model. Less so where prices are up front. You can all think of fast food outlets where the prices are right in front of people buying it. That tends to be a little bit more dynamic. Where the prices are less obvious, less so. We've assumed that all those products are in full distribution. If one of the products is actually in much worse distribution, then it won't achieve the shares that the model says it will do. We've assumed the competitive array is correct. That's important. Now, in this case, it was brands of coffee. It's not too difficult. But if we're looking at investment options, then we need to make sure that we've got all of the key ones in there. It doesn't deal with discounting, and for those of you not familiar with British acronyms, that's buy one, get one free, and you can't use a brand price trade-off model to look at that. It's a zero-sum model. It assumes that you are going to be shopping and that you are going to buy one of these products. In most markets, that's realistic. People are going to continue to buy coffee, they are going to continue to buy products, but it's not realistic in all markets. If you're launching a new product, you don't have to have an iPad. You don't have to have an iPhone, although sometimes it feels like it. One of the problems with this modified one is that there isn't any standard software, but by looking at what I've just shown you and by downloading it, you can pretty easily work out how to code it. Some companies like Join the Dots have got some library routines, which means they can offer it a lot more easily. So, in summary, does it provide some diagnostics? Yes, some. It's not as rich. You don't get verbatims. You don't get feedback that way. You don't get price reversals because it's a structured data collection with a genetic type algorithm searching in within every brand to get their optimal price. It takes other products into account. You can get not only elasticities but cross elasticities. The sample sizes are quite modest. If you're looking at the total level, you can be looking at a sample size of 150 to 250. Obviously, if you want to build a separate model for occasional consumers, medium consumers, and heavy consumers, then you'd need a larger sample size. The analysis at the respondent level, you can start to segment and group the respondents by their answers. It's a zero-sum market, and it provides what-if modeling. So if you have a pricing study, and you need to look at fine detail and portfolio pricing, this is a much better way to go than the traditional brand price trade-off. So with that, I look forward to questions.